James Bond films have been blessed with great music. Between the actual soundtracks and the standout title songs, most people alive can probably hum at least one Bond tune. However, there are ones that perhaps deserve a closer inspection from the general public. Fans of the films know that there are several additional songs featured, some of which were originally meant to go over the main titles, and others that serve primarily as thematic coloring to the underscore or as diegetic music. And we're going to go over 14 or so of these tunes. Before we get started, I want to lay out my ground rules so people aren't as confused as to why such and such a song isn't here, so bear with me for a minute. Not that I think too many people are going to be confused, but I'm making a distinction between secondary songs and rejected songs. Rejected songs are those that were submitted for the film but ended up not being featured in the final project at all. Secondary songs can also be rejected title songs, but the distinction is that either their melody or the song itself features within the film. So you're not going to see Julie Rogers' version of You Only Live Twice or Radiohead's Spectre this time. Those songs deserve their own separate ranking, which I plan to do sometime down the road. The second point can get a little complicated, but I think these should be featured songs that have a guest artist and were specifically created for the film. So no California Girls or London Calling here. Here's where the confusion comes in. Some of these are background music, but I didn't include things like the nightclub music from The Man with the Golden Gun because those were solely the creation of John Barry. Tomorrow Never Dies is a strange case. Two of the background music tracks for the Carver Party technically count as they are original pieces credited to Simon Greenaway and Sasha Collinson, with the third being a cover of It Had to Be You by Gus Kahn and Isham Jones. Backseat Driver by the Propellerheads, which underscores the car park chase, would also technically count. But because I don't have anything interesting to say about the party songs, and the Propellerheads song is a bit strange because it only features once and it's more a mixture of themes from the movie than its own thing, I made the decision not to include them. For Your Eyes Only, I didn't include Take Me Home as that features a guest performer rather than a true guest artist on the composition side. In my mind, that would be like counting the For Your Eyes Only instrumental track from the album which features Derek Watkins, and that clearly doesn't work for this list. Feel free to disagree. Some choices may strike you as odd if you're unfamiliar with my other videos, like James Bond title songs ranked. But if I've already covered a song previously as part of a full-length ranking, it won't be here, since I've talked about it elsewhere. That's why Underneath the Mango Tree and We Have All the Time in the World aren't here. I will be using part of this video to correct a slight wrong from that first video, which I'll explain when we get there. Hopefully that made some sort of sense. So here's my ranking of the secondary songs of James Bond. When I made the initial rank list of Bond songs, I substituted Majesty's main theme for We Have All the Time in the World. At the time, I was following a standard practice that I had seen done with these lists before. For example, Calvin Dyson did the same thing for his list. Plus, I felt the need to switch out the main James Bond theme in Dr. No for something else. Otherwise, you'd have every other piece of music going up against one of the greatest tunes in motion picture history, so that's unfair. So I thought nothing of the switch with the Majesty selection as well. However, I have since reconsidered that position. Longtime fans will be familiar with John Barry's 007 theme, which showed up in 5 films beginning with From Russia with Love. The idea behind that was to give Bond a second theme song which could be used in place of the Monty Norman tune. Alas, it never caught on for a few reasons. However, if Barry had done the same thing with this piece, I think history would have been more kind. Majesty's main song so captures the stylish and energetic feel of the series that I feel it works much better as a Bond-themed substitute. I get giddy when the theme starts up over the film's fantastic ski sequences, and I can't watch winter sports without it in the back of my mind. I've also heard this song used in the marketing for several Bond projects, such as Spectre and the upcoming 007 First Light. It's one of the few title songs to transcend the original film itself and appear in a later installment, alongside Goldfinger, Live and Let Die, and Nobody Does It Better. I just adore this piece, particularly its use of the Moog synthesizer, and had I included it in my original tier list video, it likely would have been in the top tier alongside You Know My Name and Diamonds Are Forever. It's a signature tune that I'm always happy to hear come back. GoldenEye has a very unique soundtrack that can be polarizing amongst some fans. But one thing most people seem to agree on is that the experience of love is a terrible way to end the film. Written and performed by the composer, it's jarring, and Eric Serra's vocal style can be harsh on the ears. To be honest, I've maybe listened to this song more in preparation for this video than I have in my entire life. I almost always stop the film when the credits come up. I have two theories as to why this is here. The first has to do with Eric Serra. The experience of working with him was a bit bumpy if you go by interviews with Martin Campbell, due to Serra's insistence on certain things. Given that Eric reused a lot of the musical palette from Leon the Professional in GoldenEye, I suspect this was a cue abandoned from another project and reworked into this film. Perhaps Serra had creative control over the music for the end credits worked in as part of his contract. So this might be as simple as Serra's artistic desires encroaching on the film at the expense of something more fitting. My second theory has to do with the films that came before this. Both of the Dalton films also ended with unique love ballads. This could have just been trying to follow suit with that tradition. Now, if I can give this piece a little bit of credit, if you actually examine the lyrics and imagine someone doing a cover of this, it kind of falls in line with the melodramatic title songs from earlier films, like All Time High and Moonraker. This would still be one of the weaker entries, though, but I can imagine someone reworking this into something more fitting for the series. But as is, the musical feel and singing style feels wildly inappropriate for a Bond film, and I am of the opinion that they should have either reused the Tina Turner song or a reworked version of the James Bond theme over the credits. I mean, you had a perfectly good trailer version by Fair Parody. Why not just elongate that? I don't think anybody would have had a problem with that being here in place of a dreadfully mismatched ego trip like I think this song is. A bit cue playing over the Hector Gonzalez scene in For Your Eyes Only, you can definitely feel Bill Conti's fingerprints here in Make It Last All Night. The lyrics are also some of the most suggestive ever heard in a Bond film, making it weirdly feel appropriate for the sleazy and egotistical hitman. I couldn't find much background information about the song beyond it being credited to Conti, with lyrics from his wife Shelby and Rage. The name Rage has been used for a number of bands, most notably the German heavy metal band from 1984, originally known as Avenger. There was a band called Rage from Liverpool led by vocalist Dave Lloyd, which is a reworked version of their earlier group Nuts, which also specialized in hard rock. Having listened to some of their work, I'm still not sure if this is the Rage that was credited on the track, though I would believe it over the Spotify attribution which has the 1984 German band. Anywho, I've never been a big fan of this song. It's not painful to listen to like the Eric Serra track, so I'll give it that. But I never find it being one I anticipate when listening to the soundtrack, so I usually skip it. Perhaps the most notable thing about it is those lyrics. I mean, dang, I could see this working as part of a Vegas burlesque show. I've never really heard anyone else talk about Only Myself to Blame from The World Is Not Enough. I remember discovering it on the original soundtrack album and being confused by its inclusion. The song has a bit of a history to it. David Arnold worked with lyricist Don Black, a veteran of Bond songs, on the main title theme, which was performed by Garbage. In the course of scoring the film, Arnold came up with another melody which Black put lyrics to. Sung by Scott Walker, this was supposed to go over the end credits, but it was felt it was too much of a downer, so it was substituted for a remix of the Bond theme. Arnold has said it was one of his favorite songs to work on because it was simple and it harkened back to some of John Barry's catalog of melancholic tunes, albeit a bit darker. The lyrics represent a remorseful Bond looking back on his relationship with Elektra. I suppose it's a nice idea, and while I think it's a fine song on its own, it doesn't really match the film and was rightfully deleted. Arnold did reuse the melody for Elektra's theme, which does work for me. Had the vocal version been used as lounge music for a romantic period piece drama, this would have been perfect. But for a Pierce Brosnan James Bond film? Maybe if it was about Paris Carver in the previous film. But it doesn't really match the relationship between Bond and Elektra here, especially given the resolution of the film. I do want to briefly mention another song which was placed over the end credits for the Japanese version of the film called Sweet as Coma Again by Lunacy. It's pretty bizarre for the series, but it does place me right back in the early 2000s when these kinds of tie-in songs were common. If you imagine this in connection with films like Mission Impossible 2 and Tomb Raider, it fits in with this era. For the sole true Christmas film of the series, it's only fitting that On Her Majesty's Secret Service has a carol as part of its soundtrack. John Barry and Hal David worked with Danish singer Nina on 2 tracks for the film, but this was the only one that made it in. The other is The More Things Change, which is quite the interesting curio if you get a chance to listen to it. Shifting back to Christmas trees, it works for the film, and I like that Barry follows his standard practice and works the melody into the film's score at a few points. However, I find it to be a bit too repetitive for my taste, and it's not that interesting of a melody. Hearing a children's choir in a Bond film is also something I can't wrap my mind around. John Barry worked with Nina back in 1962 on an EP which included 4 Christmas songs, so the pairing here must have seemed like a natural fit. I wish I liked the song more, but if it wasn't tied into the series, I imagine this would have been quickly forgotten. One of the songs accompanying the main titles of Dr. No, Three Blind Mice, aka Kingston Calypso, does a great job of setting up the Jamaican environment. As fun as it is, I don't have much to say about it. It fits the score, though perhaps I should be more down on it as it contributes to setting forth the tone for the rest of the music, which can feel out of place when listening to this film with the rest of the series' discography. That might be a bit unfair, as there was no musical template to go off of, but John Barry in the subsequent entries did such a fantastic job of establishing the sonic identity of the series that it's hard to move too far from it and not help but feel a little disappointed. So chalk this one up to me not fully being able to divorce the series' later history and judge this track fairly. Fun, but undemanding and not as impactful as some of the other songs on this list. A tradition of the first 4 Daniel Craig films was to save the main James Bond theme until the end credits, and it started to get repetitive as they kept using the same version of the theme from the end of Casino Royale. However, Quantum is the slight exception. Not only did they use a new version of the theme, though it does share some similarities with the Royale version, they also included a track called Crawl End Crawl from Fortet. Fortet is the professional name of Kieran Hebden, and the song mainly takes a theme from Quantum and creates a laid-back electronic ambient piece. Unless you're me, I imagine this might have been one you forgot even exists. While it isn't one of my favorite secondary tracks, I do like hearing it after seeing the film. It serves great as a meditative piece to help you reflect on where Bond emotionally is at the end of the film. Before lo-fi tracks experienced their re-emergence on YouTube during the 2010s, I wondered about people taking themes from the series and doing this kind of experiment with them, and thankfully my wish came true. It's certainly not a driving song by its very nature, but it was an earworm for me for a couple of years, and I think that's worth acknowledging. Played briefly over a short bit of the lighter wedding party in License to Kill, this track from Ivory is quite the catchy, upbeat tune. Its calypso heritage is obvious, and I kinda love how different it feels from the rest of the film. License to Kill contains a moodier score. It features a clear Latin influence throughout. Composer Michael Kamen could have just composed his own piece matching the sonic palette of the film like he did with the casino music, and I don't think anybody would have noticed. But the lively, carefree attitude of the track helps it stand out more. It perfectly matches the joyous occasion of the lighter wedding and helps to connect the audience to the characters a bit and share in some of the joy just before tragedy strikes. The band Ivory is a Caribbean band from Barbados, whose guitarist Jimmy Duncan was a friend of Michael Kamen's, and I feel this was a great matchup. Jump Up from Byron Lee and the Dragonaires features in Dr. No as the first bit of background music from Pussfellers Club, and it's one of the first hit songs from the series. Monty Norman worked hard to get the local Jamaican flavor into the film's score, and Byron Lee's group was fast becoming one of the most sought out on the island. They went on to perform in the 1964 World's Fair in New York and had a pretty long career afterwards. The Jump Up was a local dance craze at the time, and the track was released as a single. I may not be a big fan of Dr. No's orchestral score, and the various soundtrack releases from the film I find results in a lot of head scratching, but I like a lot of what tends to show up on them, and The Jump Up is one of the first songs I think of when I think of Dr. No. It set forth a practice of using specially composed music for club and casino scenes in Bond, and I have to give it thanks for that. It's a memorable tune that has a style all on its own that's hard to dislike. Performed by Tim Feehan, Dirty Love from License to Kill follows in the vein of The Jump Up. It's the background music for the Barrelhead bar where Bond meets Pam and is aggressively dark 80s rock. I have a fondness for this type of music, and I don't question for a second this would be the music to this dung heap of a place. If it were in any other Bond film, I'd knock it down a few pegs, but because it's License to Kill, it works. License features 3 licensed songs, and this was a result of Joel Sill. By the 80s, several film soundtracks were selling well due to the presence of hit songs on their albums, and I can only imagine Joel was asked to try to do the same thing for this one. Sill is credited as music consultant, the first ever for a Bond film, and he was the one who suggested Michael Kamen to score the film. Sill then went on to do the albums for Forrest Gump and Twister. Tim Feehan had worked as far back as Footloose, and would collaborate with such artists as Madonna and Rod Stewart, thus he seemed a suitable choice for this type of piece. I find Dirty Love so nostalgically of an era I love listening to that I can't help but put it at the middle of this list. I think it's a bit of an overlooked entry, but I might be a minority on my love for Dirty Love. We look for someone. Starting out our top 5, Patti LaBelle belts out a great and soulful piece for the end credits of License to Kill. If You Ask Me To was penned by Dionne Warwick, an Oscar-nominated artist, and incidentally the individual with the most nominations without a win at 17, not counting her honorary award in 2022. Warren was inspired by Bond and Pam's romantic exchange in the film, and it results in such a memorable R&B piece that got some buzz outside the film. The song's most notable boost came when Celine Dion covered it, and it's almost certainly the more well-known version. My wife was shocked when she learned the original was a Bond song. LaBelle does a great performance that's impossible to hate. It's got all the right ingredients to make for a passionate listening experience and follows in the footsteps of a previous Bond end credits song very well. Well done, folks. I think the best film villains need a banger of a song to accompany them, particularly if that villain kills people using a Walkman. Where Has Everybody Gone from The Living Daylights serves as Necros' theme, and like other secondary songs before it, John Barry gives it the additional support it needs by placing it into the film's score, which only elevates its standing. The killer beat gets your blood pumping, and I love the screeching brass accompanying the main melody echoing earlier Bond films. Chrissie Hynde demonstrates her vocal versatility with this in the other track, which we'll get to in a minute. And I can't help but imagine about one of these two serving as the film's title track. The Pretenders were a contender to do the title song actually, but after the fantastic success of Duran Duran from the previous film, the producers felt that Aha would serve better. For what it's worth, I adore the Aha track and its use throughout the film, so I'm not too bummed out, especially since these two songs got to be in the film anyway. An energetic addition to the Bond musical library, and it's a bit of a shame that the tradition of getting additional hit songs out of a Bond film was so short-lived. I don't think you can go wrong with either of the Pretenders tracks for The Living Daylights, but If There Was a Man is my preferred of the two. The melody is so lovely and goes a long way to sell the romantic scenes between Bond and Cara. It also serves beautifully as the musical accompaniment to Vienna. In the past, Barry had been known to just use the main title song and have it double as the romantic theme. However, he decided that Aha's song just wouldn't work this time out and went with something else, and I think this was one of his best moves. The Living Daylights has long been my favorite score of the series for a number of reasons. One of those is the Pretenders tracks. If There Was a Man serves as the end credits song to the film, and unlike some of the other tracks we've talked about, it perfectly matches the final scene and doesn't mess with the satisfied feeling we get from the rest of the film. A great Bond song in its own right. As much as I love the Tom Jones song, Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is the true theme to Thunderball for me. John Barry recalled the title coming from an Italian journalist describing Bond, and at the time, he felt the word Thunderball wouldn't serve as a good lyric. So in an attempt to replicate their recent success from Goldfinger, Barry and Leslie Bricusse composed this piece, and Shirley Bassey sang it. There were issues with the track, with perhaps the most notable being that the lyrics started before the title appeared on screen during the credits, and I guess this was seen as a serious issue by some. Both Goldfinger and From Russia with Love's titles drop on screen to match the title's place in the lyrics. And because Bassey was unavailable for re-recording, Dionne Warwick did the second version. United Artists then came back and requested that the song include the word Thunderball, so Warwick's version was relegated to the end credits. However, Bassey sued the producers, and thus neither vocal version is in the film. In case you're curious, I actually prefer the Warwick version, but that doesn't mean I don't like Bassey's. The melody is used throughout the film in various ways, and while the Thunderball track also appears, this is the first song I think of. I love the jazzy vibe of the orchestration and rhythm, its darker and seductive melodic pitches, which make the song inherently sexy in a dangerous way, and the lyrics describe so wonderfully the character of Bond. It's a song that feels like it couldn't belong to any other series, and had the producers decided to have multiple iconic themes, I feel like this could have been a strong fighter in that arena. It just screams classic James Bond to me, and I'm never not put in the mood for one of the films after listening to it. Okay, this just might be my fondness for the Pierce Brosnan era of the franchise showing, but I have so much love for Surrender from Tomorrow Never Dies that if I were to rank all of the Bond songs in the series, both the primary and the secondary songs, this would be an easy choice for the top 5. I actually heard this song before the Sheryl Crow entry, which was before I ever saw Tomorrow Never Dies or any other Bond film. So I actually fell in love with this piece before I became a Bond fan. When he got the job for scoring the film, David Arnold wanted so badly to write the main title song as well, and he wanted to follow in the footsteps of John Barry and have a tune serve as the DNA for the musical score. He worked with David McCalmont, who had covered Diamonds Are Forever on Arnold's tribute to the series Shaken and Stirred, and then he brought in Don Black. When he played the song for the creative team, they were ecstatic. Unfortunately, about midway through scoring, Arnold learned that Sheryl Crow was going to sing a new song for the film, but thankfully the producers preserved the song for the end credits, though they did have to change the title from Tomorrow Never Dies to Surrender so as not to compete with the Crow song. Don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of the Crow song, but Surrender is so energetically powerful and feels like the perfect modern update to my favorite title songs of the past like Thunderball and Diamonds Are Forever. It just wraps itself around my brain and will not let go. Katie Lang performs her heart out and it shows. This is a song with such creative passion and is a Bond musical ecstasy that perfectly uses its 4-minute real estate. I think it was one of the biggest mistakes of the series to have this serve as only the end credits theme, and thus be relegated to the bins of film history. It's the most deserving at being at the front of a Bond film, and sits proudly amongst the best musical moments of the series. I'm not kidding when I said the James Bond series was blessed with great music. I have done several full-length videos and a full series of musical shorts now highlighting the soundtracks of the series, and there's probably still more to come. While I think there are franchises who have overall better and more consistent top-ranking scores like Lord of the Rings, the variety inherent in the Bond discography makes it the series whose music I've maybe listened to the most, and that's not likely to change. I hope the future continues to produce high-quality tracks for our favorite secret agent to save the world too. He deserves the very best.